After the war ended, America finally exhaled. Jobs were steady, factories roared back to life, and paychecks stretched farther than anyone remembered. Young couples got married, built houses, and dreamed bigger than their parents ever could. There was optimism in the air, the kind you could feel just walking down a street filled with new cars and fresh paint. Suburbs seemed to rise overnight. Neat rows of homes, green lawns trimmed just right, white fences lining every street. Driveways gleamed with brand-new cars, and every porch had a flag, a radio, or a family sitting outside after supper. It was a new kind of American dream. Close enough to the city for work, but far enough to feel safe. The post-war boom was more than money. It was momentum. From jet engines to space dreams, America believed in progress. Factories innovated, schools expanded, and the word tomorrow carried excitement instead of fear. It felt like the country was moving forward together. Every family, every worker, every student, all pulling in the same direction toward something brighter. Big cities were alive, but they still felt safe. Families strolled downtown after dark, neon signs buzzing above clean sidewalks, and store windows filled with new fashions. Movie marquees glowed like invitations, and corner diners stayed open late. You could leave your car unlocked and your coat on a chair. Trust was still stronger than fear in those years. A house cost around $8,000, and a single income could cover everything: the mortgage, groceries, and even a summer trip. One paycheck supported a family, and most months ended with a few dollars left over. You could live comfortably, not extravagantly, but with peace of mind. That kind of security was worth more than gold back then. People took pride in what they owned. Every Saturday, driveways filled with the sound of radios and the smell of car wax. Dads washed Chevys until they shined like mirrors. Moms swept porches, and kids mowed lawns in tidy rows. A painted fence wasn't decoration. It was a reflection of care, proof that home really meant something. When the interstate highway system broke ground in 1956, it changed everything. Families loaded cars with luggage and headed out to see America. Motels, diners, and roadside attractions dotting the way. Each mile of new asphalt meant freedom, connection, and adventure. The open road became part of the national story, written in concrete and optimism. Faith, family, and friendship anchored daily life. Sundays were for church, afternoons for family dinners, and evenings for neighbors on the porch. People found comfort in simple things: community, conversation, and gratitude. There was a rhythm to life that didn't rush. You knew where you belonged, and you took pride in it, quietly and completely. Buying a home wasn't just for the rich. Prices were low, wages were fair, and veterans coming home found help through the GI Bill. A small house with 2 bedrooms and a carport wasn't out of reach. It was expected. People believed in roots, in staying put, and in building something that could last longer than a single lifetime. Drive-in theaters felt like magic. The open sky above, headlights dimming, and the smell of buttered popcorn drifting between rows of cars. Teenagers leaned out windows, kids wore pajamas, and families watched double features from the back seat. It was cheap, it was simple, and it was pure 1950s America. Entertainment that came wrapped in starlight and laughter. Filling up the tank didn't sting your wallet. Gas was about 25 cents a gallon, and $3 went a long way. Every station had attendants in crisp uniforms who'd check your oil, clean your windshield, and wish you a good evening. It wasn't just service, it was civility, the kind of everyday courtesy that made ordinary moments feel special. College didn't require a lifetime of debt. Tuition was reasonable. Part-time jobs paid the bills, and graduates walked into steady careers right after commencement. For many families, higher education was a step up, not a gamble. It was an era when effort still meant opportunity, when studying hard truly could change the course of your life. Flying was elegant back then. Airplanes had wide seats, real meals, and windows big enough to see the clouds roll by. Stewardesses smiled, kids got wings pinned to their shirts, and no one rushed the aisle. People still marveled at the idea of being in the sky. It wasn't just transportation. It was wonder with wings. America's factories were roaring. Assembly lines turned out cars, refrigerators, televisions, and everything in between, solid, American-made, and built to last. Workers took pride in what they made because it wasn't disposable. Every paycheck came from something tangible, something built by hand. Industry wasn't just an economy. It was a source of identity, purpose, and pride. Vacations were road trips in station wagons with the windows rolled down and the radio humming. You stopped for pie at roadside diners, collected postcards, and stayed in motels with neon signs that buzzed all night. The drive itself was the adventure. Every mile brought new sights, new stories, and memories that lasted far longer than the trip itself. The word community carried weight. Neighbors shared sugar, traded tools, and stopped by unannounced just to say hello. When someone got sick, casseroles showed up without being asked. Kids played in every yard as if the whole block belonged to them. It wasn't about privacy or perfection. It was about belonging. Everyone needed everyone, and that was enough. Small towns knew how to celebrate. 4th of July parades wound down Main Street with floats, marching bands, and kids waving flags from their bikes. The whole town gathered for fireworks at night, blankets on the grass, coolers of lemonade, and applause after every burst. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about togetherness, pride, and being part of something bigger. A handshake could close a deal back then. Trust mattered more than fine print, and a man's word was as binding as any contract. Neighbors lent money, businesses extended credit, and people stood by their promises. It was a time when integrity wasn't rare, it was expected, and losing it cost you more than money ever could. Movies had real heart. Stories of love, laughter, and heroism filled the silver screen without needing explosions or effects. Films like Shane, Roman Holiday, and On the Waterfront stirred something deeper. You left the theater talking about what it meant, not what it looked like. Hollywood still believed in hope, and audiences did too. Neighbors didn't need to be asked for help. They just showed up. Someone's roof leaked? You grabbed a ladder. Fence broke. You brought tools. No favors owed, no keeping score. It was an unspoken agreement that community wasn't a word. It was an action. Helping each other wasn't kindness. It was just what decent people did. Families built things together. Gardens, porches, and dreams. Dad swung hammers while kids fetched nails, and moms planted flowers that still bloom in old yards today. It wasn't just about the projects. It was about time spent side by side. Even small things, a birdhouse, a sandbox, turned into stories that lasted long after the paint dried. People believed in earning what they had. Credit was rare, cash was king, and saving for something made it matter more. Hand-me-downs weren't shameful. They were sensible. When you finally bought something new, you took care of it. Gratitude came naturally in a world that still valued patience, thrift, and the quiet dignity of living within your means. Downtown still thrived, alive with window displays, neon lights, and the smell of popcorn from the theater. Barbershops buzzed, record stores played music into the street, and diners filled with the clatter of plates. Main Street wasn't nostalgic yet. It was normal. Every town had one, and every Saturday it was the heart of American life. Shopping was personal back then. The butcher knew your order, the grocer knew your kids, and the pharmacist didn't just hand you a prescription. He asked how your family was doing. Everything happened face to face, not through screens or scanners. Money changed hands with smiles, not swipes. Buying something wasn't a transaction. It was a conversation. Ice cream parlors and soda fountains were where life slowed down. Teenagers met after school for milkshakes, families shared banana splits after church, and everyone had a favorite booth. The clink of glassware, the hiss of a soda tap, and the smell of sugar in the air. It was the taste of happiness served by the scoop. Baseball was everywhere, in backyards, empty lots, and over the radio. Kids played stickball until dusk, dreaming of mantle and maize while fathers listened to play-by-play with a beer in hand. The crack of a bat carried through the neighborhood. Baseball wasn't just a sport. It was a season, a soundtrack, and a shared language all its own. Television wasn't background noise. It was an event. Families gathered on the couch for I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, or The Lone Ranger. Laughter, applause, and that warm glow filled the room. There was only one TV in the house, but it was enough, because everyone wanted to watch together, not apart. Radios filled kitchens with music that soothed the day. Perry Como, Doris Day, Nat King Cole. The gentle crackle between songs was as familiar as the ticking clock. Dinner simmered on the stove while melodies wrapped around the family like comfort itself. Music wasn't about fame or downloads. It was about feeling good right where you were. Cars weren't just transportation. They were pride on four wheels. Tail fins gleamed, chrome sparkled, and engines purred with power. Every driveway looked like a car show. Washing and waxing on Saturdays was a ritual, and Sunday drives were a reward. Those cars weren't practical, but they were beautiful. Reflections of a country that still dreamed in color. Gas stations were part service, part social stop. Attendants filled your tank, washed your windows, and sometimes handed out free glasses or S&H green stamps. You didn't even have to step out of the car. There was conversation, courtesy, and maybe a tip jar on the counter. Refueling felt friendly, another small ritual in a slower, kinder America. Politeness was expected, not praised. Men tipped their hats, boys held doors, and girls said, "Thank you." Neighbors greeted each other on sidewalks. Strangers helped pick up dropped groceries, and everyone minded their manners. It wasn't formality. It was respect. The kind that made even the smallest town feel like a place you wanted to call home. Teachers held authority and earned respect. Classrooms were quiet, chalk squeaked on the blackboards, and kids stood when spoken to. Lessons went beyond books. They taught discipline, honesty, and pride in your work. Parents backed teachers, not argued with them. School was serious, but fair. Every child learned that effort and respect could take them farther than excuses. The school lunchroom had its own rhythm. The clatter of trays, the smell of gravy, and warm yeast rolls stacked high. Real cooks made hearty meals that felt like home. You didn't count calories. You counted friends at your table. Lunch wasn't rushed or packaged. It was shared, noisy, and honest. It was another small comfort of growing up in the 1950s. Kids walked to school without a second thought, lunch boxes clanking and bikes lined up by the fence. Streets were quiet. Drivers waved, and every crossing guard knew your name. You carried peanut butter sandwiches, a thermos of milk, and the freedom to roam. There was no traffic jam or stranger danger, just kids on their way, laughing all the way there. Every morning, the milkman's truck rattled through the neighborhood before sunrise. Glass bottles clinked softly on porches, the air still cool and quiet. Families woke to find fresh milk, cream, or butter waiting by the door, each bottle capped in foil and icy cold to the touch. It was simple, dependable, a daily rhythm that felt both ordinary and special. Housewives took pride in every detail. Floors gleamed, linen smelled of sunshine, and curtains fluttered in the breeze from open windows. Clotheslines stretched across backyards full of crisp shirts and bright towels. It wasn't drudgery, it was dignity. Keeping a home spotless wasn't about appearances, it was about care, about giving your family something steady in a world that was changing fast. New appliances were miracles. Washing machines swirled where hands once scrubbed. Refrigerators hummed instead of ice boxes melting, and vacuums rolled like spaceships across living rooms. The promise of convenience arrived in chrome and enamel, changing the rhythm of the household forever. For the first time, families had more time to rest, to laugh, to sit together without chores waiting. Department stores were like temples of wonder. Escalators carried you past perfume counters, toy aisles stretched endlessly, and holiday displays glittered like dreams. A clerk in gloves might gift wrap your purchase just because. Sears, J.C. Penney, and Woolworths weren't just stores. They were experiences, places where window shopping could lift your mood as much as buying ever did. The Sears catalog felt like magic in the mail. Page after page of furniture, dresses, and Christmas toys you could order from your living room. Kids circled their wishes in pencil, parents planned home projects, and everything you needed could arrive by train or truck. It wasn't just a catalog. It was a portal to possibility, bound in glossy paper. Dinner wasn't something you grabbed. It was something you gathered for. Tables were set, grace was said, and stories from the day filled the air. The smell of roast, mashed potatoes, and rolls drifted through every home. Nobody ate alone or stared at screens. Family time wasn't a slogan. It was simply what everyone did every single night. Groceries didn't cost much, but they went far. A few dollars bought a week's worth of real food: flour, meat, butter, and vegetables. Every meal started from scratch, with the steady rhythm of chopping, stirring, and tasting. Food tasted like home because it was made there. Kitchens were the heart of the house, and every dish carried a story. Restaurants served the kind of food that felt familiar: roast beef with brown gravy, mashed potatoes, green beans, and pie that tasted like someone's grandmother made it. Waitresses knew regulars by name, and a good tip meant your coffee never went cold. Eating out wasn't fast, it wasn't fancy. It was comfort served on china with a smile. Fast food was still a novelty. McDonald's was the new kid on the block, serving burgers for 15 cents and shakes you needed 2 hands to hold. The glowing arches looked futuristic, and kids begged to go just for the fun of it. No one guessed it was the start of something bigger. Just that dinner came quick and tasted good. Sundays had their own rhythm. Families dressed their best for church, filled pews with familiar faces, and came home to roast dinners that filled the house with warmth. Afternoons were for rest: front porches, iced tea, and the sound of baseball on the radio. Sunday wasn't about doing, it was about being. Still, grateful, and together. Family drives were their own kind of adventure. No one needed a destination, just smooth roads, a full tank, and maybe a stop for ice cream. Windows rolled down, the wind in your hair, and the radio humming a tune everyone knew. Sometimes you talked, sometimes you didn't. Either way, the road had a way of bringing people closer. Summer belonged to the kids. They built soapbox races, played marbles in the dirt, and stayed out until the streetlights flickered on. With no screens and few rules, imagination ruled the day. Skinned knees were badges of honor, and boredom was the birthplace of creativity. Childhood wasn't curated. It was lived, loud, messy, and completely free. The corner drugstore was a treasure chest of small joys. You could sip a milkshake at the counter, flip through comic books, and buy penny candy with nickels dug from your pocket. The soda jerk knew your favorite flavor, and the pharmacist might slip you a free stick of gum. It wasn't just a store. It was a hangout, a heartbeat. Nothing beat an ice-cold Coke in a glass bottle. You'd pop the cap, watch the fizz rise, and take that first sharp sip while condensation ran down your hand. It was sweet, simple, and perfectly American. Kids collected bottle caps. Grown-ups collected memories. Before plastic and twist-offs, even a drink carried a kind of ceremony you never forget. School gymnasiums were the heart of small towns. On weekdays, kids ran laps and learned basketball. On weekends, they hosted talent shows, bake sales, and Saturday dances. Folding chairs lined the floor, the band struck up, and neighbors filled the bleachers just to cheer. Those buildings weren't just for school. They were where the whole town came together. Families gathered around the TV to watch the evening news and actually trusted what they heard. Anchormen spoke plainly, without drama or opinion, and people believed them because truth still carried weight. Afterward, the TV went dark, and families talked about the stories. Information felt smaller, slower, and somehow more human. It was news that united, not divided. Travel was an occasion, not an inconvenience. People dressed up for it, hats, ties, gloves, and all. Train stations smelled of coffee and polished brass. Airports buzzed with excitement, not exhaustion. Even short trips felt special. Travel wasn't about getting somewhere fast. It was about the feeling of going somewhere new, together, with respect for the journey itself. A dollar stretched far because quality stretched further. Things weren't replaced. They were repaired. Appliances ran for decades, furniture lasted generations, and tools were passed down, not thrown away. The idea of built to last wasn't marketing. It was a promise. People didn't chase trends. They bought what worked and kept it until it couldn't anymore. Every morning, the thump of a newspaper on the porch meant the world had arrived. Dads unfolded it at breakfast, moms read it over coffee, and kids checked the comics before school. Headlines shaped conversation, not arguments. The news felt local, human, and honest. Everyone knew what was going on, and somehow that made the country feel smaller and closer. Jobs came with security, pensions, benefits, and faith that the company you started with might be the one you retired from. Employers invested in people, and workers took pride in loyalty. You didn't need to job hop to survive. Hard work was enough. That quiet sense of stability gave life a rhythm modern times rarely allow anymore. The middle class was the backbone of the nation. Most families owned their homes, paid their bills, and saved a little each month. Vacations were modest but meaningful, and no one felt left behind. Success wasn't measured in luxury, but in comfort. A roof, a car, and peace of mind. In the 1950s, that was more than enough. Neighbors weren't just acquaintances, they were family by proximity. Coffee cups crossed fences, phone calls were rare because visits were easier, and unlocked doors meant trust, not risk. People noticed if you were gone and asked how they could help. It wasn't about privacy, it was about presence. Everyone had someone nearby who cared, and that made life feel safe. Doctors still made house calls, carrying black bags that smelled faintly of medicine and leather. When someone was sick, neighbors brought casseroles, kids delivered flowers from the yard, and nobody faced illness alone. Medicine was personal, and healing felt communal. The line between kindness and care didn't exist. They were the same thing. The corner barber shop and beauty salon were the social centers of the neighborhood. Men swapped jokes over the hum of clippers, while women traded recipes under the smell of hairspray. The striped pole spun outside like a signal of familiarity. You didn't just get a haircut. You got caught up on life, community, and every bit of local news. Schools still taught the fundamentals: civics, handwriting, and practical skills like shop and home economics. You learned how to write a letter, balance a checkbook, and build something with your hands. Education wasn't about tests. It was about character. Teachers shaped good citizens, not just students. And that foundation carried people through their whole lives. Above all, the 1950s were built on hope, a deep, steady faith that tomorrow would be even better. Hard work mattered, honesty paid off, and the future felt like something you could count on. The country wasn't perfect, but it was optimistic. That quiet confidence, that belief in better days, was the true soul of the era.